Hi everyone, this is Maury Glazer. I'm sitting here with Gary Shearling, our tax manager at Glazer Financial Network. As you know, we have been trying to do various topics on tax. Today we want to talk about several things. One, the first thing is the amnesty program that was instituted in March of this year. It's been fast and furious with people coming forward and making sure if they needed to file any forms or if they haven't reported income or dividends or capital gains, that we got that situation under control. And I would only recommend to everyone, this is a very serious situation. We have clients where I have one client that has a lot of money, and the penalty is 25% of the highest balance in your account. So it could have been $1 million, the highest balance. That's $250,000, and yet that money might be all gone because you spent it. You still have a penalty of $250,000. Now, it could be mitigated by the fact that you didn't have any interest or dividends, but it is very, very serious, and I would recommend everybody come forward, let us do our free analysis. We're willing to look at 3 years tax returns. We're willing to do an analysis to see what your situation is and how we can potentially help you. If we feel that it is really serious, we take you to a tax attorney where we would work under the tax attorney. And we want to tell everybody that putting your head in the sand is not going to get you to where you need to be. The overall theory that I think Glazer Financial has developed over the last 20 years, and of course myself for a lot longer than that, but Glazer Financial over 20 years, and over the last 10 years with Gary Shearling, is the planning aspect of tax. The issue comes in that if you always wait till 10 months after or 7 months after the year end ends, there is no way for you to combat some of the things that are happening right now. Documentation is everything. Gary Shearling has won some very significant cases by notes on a yellow pad, and these kind of things are extremely important to realize. We need to start planning in January for the end of the year. And if we're planning, we need to do financial planning, we need to do tax planning, we need to make sure where you're at. Even if you're a small taxpayer, because small taxpayers can't afford to pay the tax either if they get audited. Or, and the fact that you decide, well, I can't pay it anyway, so I'm not going to do anything, that is a mistake. Gary has put together some thoughts on the IRS. We have been getting a ton of IRS audits. It's not because of anything that we did, but the IRS has a new selection process, which is anything that doesn't look similar to what happened the year before. They're questioning things like leaving a accounts receivable amount off of a balance sheet when there was accounts receivable there the last year, even though there might not be any accounts receivable. So we are becoming very computer conscious from the IRS standpoint. When they look at things, they're comparing. That's what we do always in review, compare from years to year. But the issue is the IRS is doing it. Gary's almost full time now, just doing IRS cases.
Yep.
Gary?
Keeping us busy. Yeah, you're right, Maury. The IRS is coming faster, stronger, a little harder. I mean, they're determined to close the tax gap. They're determined to collect faster. And like you said, they're looking at these variances. There's, like you said, mismatch of data, high swings from prior years.
No 1099s.
No 1099s, a mismatch issue, or K1's missed, or sometimes it's the littlest thing on a tax return, like not marking a box, like cash or accrual or terminal or final. Some little matter Just
where there was multiple houses being sold.
right. And just because a little item in there is not marked, causes a manager or someone to review it, and then based on their review, they decide whether there's going to be an examination or an audit. And then sometimes it gets passed and nothing happens, but sometimes because of a little minor thing, a big exam issue develops, and then of course we provide the data and the documentation and defend it the best we can. But by presentation and by organizing the data, good clean presentation, file timely, the more things you do right and kind of flow the system.
Salary, making sure
Yep.
you're on salary if you have your own business.
Yep. Less chance then of sort of falling off the track and getting targeted for an examination.
Yeah, the actual, one of the things about withholding and paying your tax timely, there's a big difference between having a salary and having withholding tax than doing estimates. If you do salary, that gets to be determined as being payments over 12 months. If you do
Right.
estimates,
Exactly right.
then it's determined that it's got to be in by those due dates of the estimates. So paying salary isn't always a bad thing.
No.
It could be a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And the other area that is most important, we come across it every day, is documentation. You might have already alluded to that a little bit, but documentation. You can have large deductions, short sales, for example. We have a series of those going on, and some big swings, some big losses, but we have the documentation. We have the closing documentation. We have the bank documentation. We have the cancellation of debt documentation. When we have all those data, and we maintain all that in our files, and so we can document it. So you can take a position that looks strange or unusual that could be investigated, but we have the data and the documentation to support that. Like we always say, documentation, documentation, documentation. You can never have too much documentation. That goes all the way on to auto, like mileage or travel or meals. Take
Save
someone
your
for
repair
meals.
bills.
Yep, or oil change things to get mileage documentation. We always suggest on meals, for example, and travel documentation, where did you go, who did you meet with, who did you dine with, and the more information the better, because when you're sitting across the desk with an auditor, the more data and the more presentation of data you can present, hey, the better off it is. We've been successful in cases by showing documentation, even though it was weak, but it was well organized and it maintained and it focused to the area that we wanted to go, and we were successful.
And the other thing is we have a very large staff here. We have probably 15, 16 accountants, and we work in layers, so we have review upon review. But more importantly than anything is the fact that even if you don't have documentation, we are very, very efficient at looking at things and re-establishing the documentation, because it's not like you're, and hopefully that you just run a cash business and it's it from the left pocket to the right pocket. But in almost every case, we're able to recreate what actually happened and be able to show the IRS what is going on. Gary is the enrolled agent. He's a Canadian CPA. He's got this soft-spoken way of dealing with it. When I was dealing with the IRS, I was a little bit more hyper. Gary tends to take it out on himself, but he's also very low-key, and he's able to assess where we're at and what we need to be doing.
With dealing with the IRS, it just takes a lot of common sense, just sort of understanding their system, working their
And never lie.
plans. No, tell the truth, absolutely, always tell the truth, but we just use common sense, make good presentation, become very well prepared, that's a key thing, and then, we communicate a lot, we're always in communication, and then we stay pretty persistent, so if we think we have data and we're correct, we will persevere, and we will keep tracking down that area to do the best possible thing we can for the client, for the taxpayer.
The other thing that the group does is, and again, a lot of this has to do with Gary's organization. Gary tends to get people who have tax notices, who owe tax, he tries to get them into compliance in a stage-by-stage situation. You might owe $1 million, but you've got to start somewhere to get things organized. So Gary comes in and determines what the real issues are, and then he says, okay, let's how much can you afford? Let's start paying $1,000 a month. And we try to come to a program so that when, by the time the IRS audit or time the question comes up or whatever, Gary has people starting to correct, trying to get compliant. We got to get current, and then we can go back and work on the old stuff, the old documents.
And that's been quite successful. I mean, the IRS, from their perspective, is trying to collect the debt, and the taxpayer can't pay it, so we have to find some middle territory there and work together to accomplish it, to keep all parties happy. So, like you say, we kind of like to park the old big debt. Often it's a big number, and we park that there, become current and compliant going forward, so we move out of this sort of vicious, out of control cycle where the debt's always building. So we become current and compliant, and then we chip away on a plan to pay the old thing. And then, like you say, often IRS is slow in responding, or they're bogged down with things. We start making voluntary payments, and we kind of draw them into an installment program or a repayment plan where we want to go. And that works quite successfully because you're making payments. And if they see money coming in, hey, that's the bottom line. They're happy.
And Gary's been very successful at working the issues of penalties for first-time situations. So just because, being fearful doesn't get it done. But Gary just had a case where he was arguing at the IRS that it was a first-time situation, and that he should be allowed to get rid of that penalty, because the penalty is pretty big in that particular case. And he's been very successful at getting these people, the IRS, to agree. We're very selective if we pick up the phone and call and we have an IRS agent that's abusive, or they too are under stress, or whatever their problems are for the day, we say thank you very much and we hang up, and we call back another day or call back later or whatever, because we do need to be able to talk to people in a reasonable tone. Nothing to be afraid of. Gary doesn't allow our taxpayers to go in front of the IRS.
Right.
I think the first one was just the other day where he had to do an interview, and that worked out okay. Mm-hmm. We try not to allow the agent to interview the client. We tend to know we have 3,000-4,000 clients. We do 2,600 tax returns. So we try to get things under control and try to carry on the whole conversation ourselves with the IRS. So please call us, send us your documents. Let's do a free analysis. If you email me at mglaizer@glazerfinancial.com, or call us at 800-999-8931. That's mglaizer@glazerfinancial.com, GLAZER. Or 800-999-8931, where you can get Gary or myself. Or you can even call me on my cell phone, 469-358-2818, 469-358-2818.